Ahab, the king of Israel, was dead. His reign had been a tumultuous one, filled with controversy and conflict. The people of Israel had long suffered under his rule, and now, with his passing, a sense of uncertainty loomed over the kingdom. He had been a wicked king, leading his people astray. His decisions had brought about great suffering and turmoil. The people, once united under a common faith, were now divided and lost. Ahab had worshipped false gods and turned away from the one true God. His devotion to these idols had not only corrupted his own soul, but had also led many of his subjects down a path of sin and disobedience. His reign was marked by idolatry and sin. Temples dedicated to false gods sprang up across the land, and the true worship of the God of Israel was suppressed. The moral fabric of the kingdom was in tatters. Now his son Ahaziah ascended the throne. The young king faced a kingdom in disarray, a people yearning for guidance and a return to righteousness. The weight of his father's legacy was a heavy burden to bear. Would he follow in his father's footsteps or seek a new path? The court was filled with whispers and plots, each faction vying for influence over the new king. Ahaziah's every move was watched, his every decision scrutinized. The kingdom held its breath. The people, weary from years of misrule, hoped for a change. They longed for a leader who would restore their faith and lead them back to the true God. Ahaziah inherited not only a kingdom, but also a legacy of disobedience. The sins of his father cast a long shadow over his reign. The young king struggled with the expectations placed upon him and the reality of the kingdom's dire state. The weight of his father's choices pressed upon him. Every decision he made was influenced by the past, and the pressure to break free from that legacy was immense. Ahaziah knew that the future of Israel depended on his choices. Would he break free from the chains of idolatry, or would he tighten their grip? The young king stood at a crossroads, his heart torn between the teachings of his ancestors and the allure of the false gods his father had worshipped. The fate of Israel hung in the balance. The people watched anxiously, their hopes and fears intertwined. The kingdom teetered on the edge of a precipice, and the direction Ahaziah chose would determine its future. The shadow of Ahab loomed large. His influence was still felt in the palaces and temples, a constant reminder of the past. The young king could feel the weight of his father's presence in every corner of the kingdom. His influence could still be felt in the palaces and temples. The remnants of Ahab's reign were everywhere, from the grand halls of the palace to the sacred spaces of the temples. The past was not easily forgotten. The prophets of Baal, emboldened by years of royal patronage, continued to spread their lies. They held sway over many, their voices loud and persuasive. The true prophets of the God of Israel were marginalized and silenced. Ahaziah faced a critical choice. Would he serve the God of his ancestors or bow to the idols of his father? The decision he made would shape the future of Israel. The young king's heart was heavy with the weight of this choice, knowing that the destiny of his people rested in his hands. Tragedy struck. Ahaziah suffered a serious fall. He was confined to his bed, his life hanging by a thread. Fear gripped his heart. In his desperation, he sought an answer. He wanted to know if he would recover. But instead of turning to the God of Israel, he sought guidance elsewhere. Ahaziah sent messengers on a perilous journey, their destination Ekron, a Philistine city, their mission to consult Baal-zebub, a false god. Ahaziah's question revealed his heart. He sought the counsel of a pagan deity, a god who could offer no true hope or healing. His decision was a slap in the face of the one true God. It was an act of rebellion, a declaration of allegiance to a false power. Ahaziah, in his moment of weakness, turned his back on the God of his fathers. He chose the path of idolatry, a path that would lead him to ruin. The Lord saw Ahaziah's actions. He observed from his heavenly throne, his gaze piercing through the veils of time and space, witnessing every deed and every thought. He saw the king's defiance and his worship of a false god. God's heart grieved deeply, for Ahaziah had turned away from the true path, choosing instead to bow before lifeless idols. The king's actions were a stark betrayal of the covenant that had been established with his ancestors. He had chosen Israel, had delivered them from slavery, and had made a covenant with them. This covenant was not just a mere agreement, it was a sacred bond, a promise of protection and guidance in exchange for their faithfulness and obedience. Yet they continued to stray. Time and again they turned their backs on him, seeking solace in the worship of false gods. This recurring disobedience pained the Lord, but he remained patient, hoping for their return. However, with Ahaziah's blatant rebellion, God decided to act decisively. He would confront Ahaziah's rebellion. The time had come for a direct intervention, a powerful reminder of his sovereignty and the consequences of turning away from him. He would remind his people of his power and his faithfulness. Through his chosen prophet, he would deliver a message that would resonate through the ages, a testament to his enduring love and justice.
God spoke to Elijah, his prophet. In the stillness of the night, amidst the whispers of the wind, Elijah heard the divine call. The message was clear and urgent. He instructed Elijah to intercept the king's messengers. These messengers were on their way to seek guidance from Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron, a clear act of defiance against the God of Israel. Elijah, a man of unwavering faith and fiery passion, was to deliver a message. His heart burned with righteous indignation, and his spirit was fortified by the divine command. He was to confront the king's idolatry and pronounce God's judgment. This was no ordinary task. It was a mission that required immense courage and absolute trust in the Lord's protection. Elijah, fueled by God's power, went forth to fulfill his mission. Each step he took was guided by divine providence, and his resolve was unshakable.
The encounter was swift and dramatic. Elijah stopped the messengers. He questioned their mission. His voice, filled with authority, echoed through the air, demanding answers.
Why, he asked, would the king of Israel seek guidance from Baal-zebub? His question was not just a query, but a challenge to their misplaced faith. Was the God of Israel unable to heal? The messengers were taken aback, their minds racing to comprehend the gravity of Elijah's words.
Elijah's words were sharp, cutting through their excuses. His presence was commanding, and his message was clear and undeniable. He announced God's judgment. Ahaziah would not recover. The king's fate was sealed, a direct consequence of his defiance. He would die in his bed. The prophecy was a stark reminder of the power and justice of the God of Israel, a lesson for all who would dare to turn away from him. The messengers, shaken by Elijah's words, returned to Ahaziah. Their faces were pale, their steps unsteady, as if they had seen a ghost. The weight of the prophet's words hung heavily upon them, and they knew they bore grave news. They relayed the prophet's message with trembling voices, each word a dagger to the king's pride. "Thus says the Lord," they began, "you shall not come down from the bed to which you have gone up, but you shall surely die."
"Who dares to defy me? Who is this man?" The king's voice thundered through the hall, his eyes blazing with fury. He could not fathom that anyone would dare to challenge his authority, let alone a lone prophet.
Enraged and disbelieving, Ahaziah demanded answers. His advisors cowered, knowing the king's wrath was as unpredictable as a storm. "Find this Elijah," he commanded, "and bring him to me." He sent a captain with 50 soldiers to arrest Elijah. The soldiers marched with determination, their armor clinking with each step. They were confident in their numbers and their mission, unaware of the divine power they were about to confront. Their arrival was met with defiance. Elijah stood his ground, his eyes unwavering, his faith unshakable. He knew he was not alone. The power of the Almighty was with him.
"If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50 men." Elijah's voice rang out with authority, and the soldiers hesitated, sensing the gravity of his words.
Heaven roared. The skies darkened and a fierce wind began to blow. Thunder rumbled ominously, as if the heavens themselves were preparing for battle. Fire descended, engulfing the soldiers, leaving no survivors. The flames were fierce and unrelenting, a clear sign of divine judgment. The air was filled with the acrid smell of burning, and the ground was scorched where the soldiers had stood. The display of divine power was undeniable. Yet Ahaziah remained unrepentant. The people who witnessed the event were struck with awe and fear, but the king's heart was hardened. His heart, hardened by pride, refused to acknowledge the might of the God of Israel. He could not accept that his authority was being challenged by a higher power.
"Send another captain with 50 men!" Ahaziah's voice was filled with determination and anger. He would not be deterred by the loss of his men. He believed that sheer force would bend the prophet to his will.
The death of the soldiers did not deter Ahaziah. His resolve was as strong as ever, and he was determined to bring Elijah to heel, no matter the cost. He sent another captain with 50 men. The new captain, aware of the fate of his predecessors, marched with a sense of foreboding. Yet, duty compelled him to obey the king's command. They too met a fiery end. The heavens once again responded to Elijah's call, and fire rained down, consuming the soldiers. The message was clear. Defiance against God's chosen prophet would not be tolerated. The message was clear. God's judgment was at hand. The stormy skies and the relentless fire were a testament to the divine power at work. Yet Ahaziah's heart remained unmoved. But Ahaziah, blinded by arrogance and consumed by his illness, refused to heed the warnings. His body weakened by disease, his mind clouded by pride, he could not see the truth before him. He persisted in his rebellion, sealing his fate with each act of defiance. His stubbornness and pride led him down a path of destruction, a tragic example of the consequences of defying divine will. Twice God had demonstrated his power. Twice Ahaziah had witnessed the consequences of his rebellion. Yet he remained unmoved. He clung to his idols, refusing to humble himself before the God of Israel. His heart had grown cold. He had become a prisoner of his own pride. A third captain was dispatched with 50 soldiers. He approached Elijah, but this time there was a difference. This captain, unlike his predecessors, showed a measure of respect. He recognized the power of the God Elijah served. He pleaded for mercy.
"Man of God, please have respect for my life and the lives of these 50 men. The other 2 captains and their men are dead. We have heard of your power, and we know that you speak for the Lord. Please spare us."
His words were a glimmer of hope in the darkness of Ahaziah's stubbornness. Would this act of humility sway the course of events?